Welcome, everyone, to our Tuesday, November 8th, 2022 regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with Government Code Section 5493E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
One moment. Director Coleman.
Present.
Director Katz. Director McIntosh.
Here.
Director Mellon.
Present.
Director Patterson.
Present.
Director Young.
Present.
President Lenny.
Here. We're on to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to make public comment, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Is there anyone online for public comment?
Are there any hands for public comment? I have one. I have two, three. Okay. I'm going to start. I have 3 hands for public comment.
All right. You have 3 minutes to speak. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Please refrain from providing personal information such as addresses or phone numbers during public comment. If we need this information, we'll have you contact staff. The Secretary will call each speaker in the order received. The Secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time is concluded.
Okay. Joe Pangilinan, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Good morning, President Lenny, fellow members of the board, and General Manager Chan. My name is Joe Pangilinan, and I'm the Chief Steward of AFSCME Local 444. I'm speaking to you today regarding a matter that is of great concern to the union. I've been active in the union for my entire 17-year career here at EBMUD. I've been the Chief Steward of Local 444 for several years now, and I have never witnessed a raised level of harassment and retaliation of one of my stewards until recently. My steward in the maintenance specialist classification has been a model employee of EBMUD for close to 13 years. He has worked as a maintenance specialist and a construction inspector. He has always been a respectful employee when it came to matters concerning the district and its practices. If there was ever an issue, he would bring it to his chain of command and work towards a resolution. Unfortunately, he has been a witness to the disparity and racial inequity and mistreatment of some individuals by those in positions of power. In the last couple of years, he has performed his duty of being a union steward for his work group with respect and integrity by trying to resolve issues at the lowest level. What he has performed would be defined as lawful union activity. Regular informal discussions with the supervisory and management group did not resolve the issues. Therefore, those issues rose to grievances and the reporting of safety concerns, which are the proper venues for those items. After he and his fellow stewards filed several grievances, the treatment towards both started to change. Lawful union activity was detailed on their performance appraisals, and everything they did now was scrutinized. This leads me to my main concern, which is a notice of intent to suspend for 15 days, which was generated and given to my steward last week, Friday afternoon. Please keep in mind that I filed a grievance the day prior to that notice being generated. The Skelly hearing is scheduled for November 10th, which is 4 business days from the issuance of the notice. And in all my years, I've never seen such a turnaround for a Skelly hearing. The investigation into my steward for trying to purchase a larger size safety shoe than normally ordered and the interaction with the salespeople at the store. He has never been under investigation or received any discipline until recently. This investigation started with a preserve memo, and after 2 investigatory interviews in July and 3 more preserve memos, a 4-month-long investigation, a notice of intent to suspend for 15 days was generated. The department took 4 months to investigate this issue, while the union gets less than 4 business days to ask any questions or request any information in his defense. There are several issues with the notice of suspension that will be questioned. The notice usually includes notes for the investigatory interviews, but these notes were not provided. I participated in both investigatory interviews. The first interview was halted due to my performing lawful union activity. I was told I could not ask any questions during the interview. There are apparently some misconceptions on how unions work within this department. Last week, my steward was told termination was on the table when he was handed the notice.
Your 3 minutes
He was
have
also-
concluded. If you could wrap up your comments, please.
I will, Risha. He was told to come prepared, quote unquote, to the Skelly hearing. These statements are threatening and are something a bully would say to their victim. I will wrap up my comments with one thought. During this investigation, my steward's child was diagnosed with cancer. The department knew of this development, and yet management continues to pursue discipline as if there is a price to pay for being a local 444 steward and speaking up. I am not bringing this to your attention for you to act on. I only wish to advise this board that some of your managers and supervisors are treating my stewards with retaliatory behavior. We have made information requests so we can prepare to defend him during his upcoming Skelly hearing. We will follow the process and procedures that are in place. My statement today should bring awareness as to why the values to most EBMUD employees are just words at the end of an email signature. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, and this does seem like something that I'd certainly be interested to hear more about.
As well.
If I can interject real quickly, in our last meeting in Ledge HR, we had a presentation, and I asked specifically, which we'll be getting from HR and from Clifford, how do we deal with employees who are like that, what Joe is alluding to? How are they dealt with once they pass probation? And what is the process and policy in place? So that may help address some of the things that Joe's raising.
And I can provide a memo, confidential memo with more information on this. I'm not aware of it. So.
All right.
Okay. Next, we have George Cleveland. George, you have 3 minutes. Starts now.
Okay, thank you, Risha, and I'm not quite sure how to follow that. I'll start by saying I've been with the district for almost 28 years. I'm George Cleveland, the Chief Steward of Local 2019. I've been active in the local for about 25 plus, and I've never had anything on my performance appraisal that details my union activities. And just listening to what was said, it basically the threats, it sure sounds like somebody's Weingarten rights are being violated, and it looks like somebody, maybe the district could be on the wrong end of another lawsuit. Anyhow, my own thing with my local 2019 members, we had an instance where one of my employees was engaged in a chat with the supervisor about the work, and there was some back and forth and a disagreement. At the end of the discussion, the supervisor, and this was substantiated, told the employee, stop acting like a baby. Now, put yourself in that position, board and GM and anyone else in the room, how you would feel if you were on the receiving end of that comment. And then while everything is being investigated, how would you feel if you still had to report to that supervisor? It's an interesting question. The board might direct its comments through the GM and through the Director of Engineering and Construction, because that's where this issue is happening. The other thing, you know, we had an instance where Local 2019 filed a grievance and asked, the remedy that we asked for is something that I might have done maybe, oh, I can count the time on one hand that I've asked for this type of remedy. It's for this particular manager, because of the manager's conduct, to be let go. Because at first it thought it was because it was a probationary appointment, but then it's one of the ones that the position doesn't have civil service status, so the person could be let go for any time, any reason. But, you know, if you're going to be verbally abusive in your conduct and you're going to treat people with disrespect, and it's noted and it's documented and there's pages of evidence of it, you know, it's something that perhaps the board could ask the GM to talk with the Director of Operations and Maintenance, find out why this is happening. I kind of alluded to it to a couple of the members of the board at the Upcountry Barbecue, but it kind of dovetails with what Joe was saying. There are some folks in this company who do not know how to treat people and treat those words, those phrases, those values, things that we were taught when we were in kindergarten, as Joe said, as words on a page. Like I said, I've been here a long time, going on 28 years. I expect better as an employee. I expect better as a ratepayer, that people need to know how to behave properly and to treat people properly as well. And the fact that we have these situations that are ongoing, it does not speak well, and it's not a good thing. And again, how would you feel if somebody told you in a conversation, in a professional environment, to stop acting like a baby? Or if you were a manager that just tossed out F-bombs like they were candy in professional meetings? These are the examples I'm talking about. If Local 2019 is saying you need to let this person go, it's very, very rare. Some people might think it's not so rare because there's been another one where I asked for somebody to go, but that's just circumstances and timing. It's very rare. And for the so we just want to bring that to your attention so you could find out more about it. And perhaps, as what Director Coleman said, it might be something that would fall under that purview, as what he said in his comment prior to mine. So that's all I have to say for today, but thank you again for your time.
All right, thank you, George.
Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic, and your 3 minutes start now.
Wow, that was a lot. I just want to segue from what George Cleveland just said. My superintendent last week, David Carlson, said that I had a holier than thou communication style. And I'm in the middle of appealing the unwarranted ratings on my performance plan and performance appraisal. So I'm going to turn to what I said this morning at the HR and Ledge committee meeting. I said that Mr. Moten's strategic plan that listed 5 pillars should have the first pillar read leadership accountability instead of leadership commitment. I said that the district needed to teach from the top down what accountability looks like, what true accountability looks like, that everyone, the GM, directors, local 21 superintendents, supervisors of all ethnic backgrounds, that they be taught to understand that they could get demoted or fired for engaging in retaliation and discrimination. Or in the least, they should forfeit their performance pay all the way up the chain of command if one work group isn't being closely monitored for violations of EEO, DFEH, and Myers-Miller's Brown Act policies. I just want to, I do want to mention, if anybody wants to hear what I said earlier, there's quite a bit. You can listen to the recording. I want to end this meeting by saying that Shantae Scott's lawsuit against EBMUD is supposed to be going to trial on Monday. It is supposed to be online. You can't see it, but you can hear it. It's on the 14th. Unless the district settles with Miss Shantae Scott, the trial is going to start on the 14th. No one can record the meeting. You're allowed to listen to it. I think that's all I have right now. I really am proud of the union staff for speaking up for its members. It feels like we're outnumbered when the district is contracting out so many jobs. But for those of us that are still here, I appreciate the words that Joe Pagnolini and Mr. Cleveland said this morning, because more people need to speak up at these meetings. Otherwise, because of the district's inability to be transparent, no one will ever know. That's all I have. I yield.
All right, we have any other speakers? All right, then we will convene to closed session to discuss closed session items, agenda items. We're scheduled to return here for our regular meeting at 1:15. Okay, welcome everyone to our Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Happy Election Day, regular business meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. In accordance with Government Code Section 54953E, this meeting will be conducted by webinar and teleconference only. A physical location has not been provided for this meeting. We will receive reports from this morning's Planning and Legislative Human Resources Committees under item 16. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Moment. Director Coleman,
Present.
Director Katz,
Present.
Director McIntosh, Director Mellon, Director Patterson,
Present.
Director Young,
I'm here.
President Lenny.
Here. All right, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, there are no announcements required from closed session. Takes us to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now, and comments on agenda items will be heard when the item is up for consideration. Madam Secretary, is there anyone online?
I don't see any hands for public comment on, we have one hand for public comment, and I'm going to ask if this is for a non-agenda item. Laurice? Should be able to unmute your mic.
Oops. It's for a it's not an agenda item.
Okay, I'm going to put you on mute for one moment, and the president will continue, and then I'll call you before we move on to consent. So I have two hands for public comment. Give me one moment. Yvette Rivera, is this for a non-agenda or an agenda item?
For both, one for a non-agenda item and one for item number 11.
Item 11? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, then when prompted, for those speakers who have raised their hand, when prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and topic. Refrain from providing personal information. If we need this, we'll contact you. The secretary will call each speaker in the order received. You'll be allotted 3 minutes to speak. And the secretary will track time and inform each speaker when the allotted time has concluded.
So we're going to start with Laurice Brown, and Yvette Rivera wants to speak on a determination and discussion item. That's item 11, and a non-agenda item. So I'm going to call Laurice first, and then Yvette for the two non-agenda items. And then Yvette, we will call you again when item 11 is up for consideration. So, Laurice, you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start
Okay.
now.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laurice Brown. I've been with the district for 17 years, and I currently serve on the local 2019 Executive Board and Stewards Council. I'm here today to speak on a grave injustice that has occurred involving one of our members. For the past 6 months, our member has endured working in a hostile environment here at the district. No one should have to endure brash behavior at the hands of their supervisor on a day-to-day basis. One of our core values here at the district is respect. Our member was not treated with respect and subjected to blatant disrespect and disregard. Our member tried in good faith to have open discussion and dialogue with the offending supervisor, as well as their chain of command, to improve their working conditions to no avail. Rather than continue to work in a hostile work environment and be subjected to excessive foul language, abrasive behavior, and blatant disrespect, this member has decided to leave the district. No one should have to work under these conditions. What made the workplace unbearable and hostile for this member? It was the supervisor's behavior. It's the type of behavior that is offensive, humiliating, and intimidating enough to force any reasonable person to leave their job. This type of behavior is considered hostile in a work environment because it was persistent, pervasive, and severe. It was disruptive to employees' work, and it was known to the employer, yet not addressed. No reasonable person should be subjected to such behavior on a day-to-day basis, and the district should not tolerate this type of behavior in the workplace. I hope the board recognizes that behavior like this in the workplace creates a serious liability for the district. Thank you for your time and attention.
Laurice, thank you. This was brought to our attention earlier today, and we are investigating this thank you for bringing this attention, and you're right, this has no place in the workplace here.
Next, we have Yvette Rivera. You should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. Thank you. This morning, I piggybacked on what Joe Pagnolini and George Cleveland said about the unprofessionalism and the harassment and retaliation in the workplace. And I guess I'm also piggybacking on Louise's comments. Just last week, I was told by my superintendent, David Carlson, that I had a holier-than-thou communication style when I was in the midst of petitioning for unwarranted performance ratings. This is completely atypical of how I'm being treated, how I've been treated since I came to the board in 2015. It's been unrelenting, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm sorry that good employees have to leave the district because they can't take it anymore. This morning, I spoke at the Diversity, Inclusion, and Strategic about the Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, Inclusion Strategic Plan and the 5 pillars that Mr. Moonton brought up this morning. I basically said the first pillar was made of talcum powder because it was called leadership. And the first pillar needs to be called leadership accountability for all the reasons that were mentioned this morning by Joe Pagnolini, George Cleveland, and now Louise. The district needs to teach upper management and local 21 supervisors what accountability means. They need to ensure that everyone from the GM, directors, local 21 superintendent, and supervisors of all ethnic backgrounds, that they understand that they can be demoted or fired for engaging in retaliation, discrimination, or turning a blind eye to it. At the least, there should be automatic forfeiting of performance pay, not only for the person who does it, but everyone up the chain of command, since they let it happen. I ended my comments this morning by talking about the upcoming Shantae Scott versus EBMUD civil rights lawsuit. That trial is supposed to happen on November the 14th. And I doubt EBMUD was going to settle last Friday because they severely trashed Ms. Scott in their response to an ABC News story. So if the trial goes forward as it's supposed to on Monday, November the 14th, everybody can listen in. You can't audio record the trial, but you can listen in. And I wanted the district to know, if the district has decided to settle, because it was on the closed board agenda this morning, I want to see before the end of the business day today, a copy of the settlement agreement. That's all I have right now. I yield.
All right, do we have any other speakers?
One moment. We have no other hands for public comment on non-agenda items.
Right. All right, we are now on consent calendar items 1 through 10. If anyone is online to comment on items 1 through 10, please raise your hand now. When prompted, please state your name, affiliation if applicable, and item number.
I don't have any hands for items 1 through 10 on the consent calendar.
Okay.
I ask that item 10 please be pulled.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon.
All right.
Items 1 through 9, I would move.
I'll second.
All right. Any, I guess not really any discussion here, but all in favor of items, consent calendar items 1 through 9, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Apologies, John.
Any abstentions? All right, carries unanimously.
For the record, I need to recuse myself on item 10 for ongoing activity.
All
Is
right.
that sufficient, Derek?
You actually need to explain why you need to recuse yourself.
Sure, I'm recusing myself for the ongoing activity with my litigation against the district, and Hanson Burchett is the lead law firm.
You have to leave the room.
Now, do I have to leave the room?
You don't. I don't believe you need to leave the room. You just don't vote on it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then, item 11.
We have to vote.
No, we need to vote.
Right, I'm saying,
Oh,
we need a motion for item 11.
Item 10.
Item 10, I'm sorry. That's why you guys got confused. My mind was thinking 10. I said 11. All right, moved by Marguerite. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second by Lisa. Director McIntosh. And then do we need a roll call vote in this case?
To be clear, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay.
Director Coleman has recused himself. Director Katz?
Yes.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Mellon?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
Director Young?
Yes.
President Lenny?
Yes. All right, carries on a vote 6-0. All right, on to item 11 then.
I need to recuse myself.
And well, you should.
Item 11 is adopting a resolution commending Director Frank Mellon and acknowledging his public service achievements. And I have some speaker notes for this.
President Lenny, we have one hand for public comment. Do you want to speak first or hear the public comment?
Usually we hear public comment afterwards.
Yes.
I think I'll do that here. So today, we are recognizing Director Frank Mellon for 28 years of service on the Board of Directors. An updated resolution is at your place to note the years of service and that he is a director at a private foundation. Frank was elected to the board in 1994. He represents Castro Valley, the communities of Cherryland and Fairview, and shares portions of the San Leandro with myself, but also he has Hayward and San Ramon. Frank has served 2 terms as board president, 2003 to 2004, and 2015 to 2016. In that role and throughout his service on the board, the district has benefited from his wealth of knowledge, including guiding the district's efforts to build more sustainable water supply and his experience in employee and labor relations. Frank has provided valuable research, valuable leadership on the EBMUD Retirement Board since 1995 and the DURWA Board since 1996. He served as chair of the DURWA Board in 2001, 2005, 2009, 2013, 2017, and 2021. He was the district's board representative on the Special Districts Association of Alameda County and also served as an Aqua Region 5 board member. Frank has worked with EBMUD staff, public officials, and local residents and businesses to develop projects that minimize environmental and community impacts while responsibly using ratepayer funds to meet seismic safety and water supply needs. Frank actively supported the Chabot Dam upgrade project which finished construction in October 2017. He supported public outreach efforts with the City of San Leandro, the East Bay Regional Park District, the Friends of San Leandro Creek, and the San Leandro Creek Waters of Connection, as well as the local neighborhood association meetings to help build community understanding of and support for the project. Even after the project was completed, Frank continues to support outreach efforts for the San Leandro Creek. His knowledge of community stakeholders and thoughtful coaching of staff were instrumental in the Southern Loop project, which today provides a second means of moving water east to west and west to east as needed. Frank spent many nights helping to address community concerns about the project. Frank has been a staunch advocate and supporter of various capital improvement programs to improve the reliability of the district's aging infrastructure, including pipeline rebuild and replacement of the district's south reservoir, which is nearing completion and will improve seismic safety, water quality, and reliability. Frank has been actively involved in supporting East Bay Mud water conservation and CEP outreach at community events. He has supported the district's efforts to increase workforce diversity and to partner with college and community employment training programs, develop local qualified job candidates. He's a strong advocate for ensuring contracting opportunities for small and local businesses in the community. Frank has a long history of community involvement. He is a former Scoutmaster, former Cub Master, and is on the board of directors of the San Francisco Bay Area Council of Boy Scouts of America. He is a volunteer director on the board for a private foundation that provides financial assistance to nonprofits who provide services to low-income seniors, and is a human resources and labor relations consultant to the public and private sectors. On behalf of the Board of Directors, it's my privilege and pleasure to congratulate Frank on his retirement and 28 years of service on the Board of Directors.
If I can make a motion to accept.
Second.
All right, motion by Director Coleman, seconded by Director Patterson. We have a public comment.
Yvette Rivera, you should be able to unmute your mic. Your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you very much. I want to start off by saying I think that it's unlawful for the board of directors to vote on, and I'm just going to say this because I'm going to say it's unlawful for Frank Mellon and the rest of the board to vote on a lawsuit that's in place right now with a fellow board member. I just think it's against the law. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I really think that the district should look into that before they finalize their decision on that case. I'm going to reserve my comments about Frank Mellon's service for a future meeting when I believe I can be there in person. Thank you for your time.
All right. We'll go on and make have a vote on this resolution. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Okay. Passes unanimously. I just was making sure. All right, passes unanimously. Congratulations, Frank.
Thank you all. The wordsmiths that put this together impressed the daylights out of me, and I, for as much as I talk on other stuff, Doug, I think for a change I'm going to say I'm humbled and I thank you all.
All right, thank you, Frank. Item 12.
Okay, so next we have a resolution to continue to hold meetings via teleconference under Government Code, Section 54953E. Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance, will update you on the latest COVID-19 data, which continues to improve, changes at the state level, and our plans to transition into the endemic phase, which includes ending the district-declared COVID emergency as early as next month. Dave?
All right, thank you, Clifford. Good afternoon, President Lenny, members of the board. And as Clifford mentioned, we'll start as soon as there we go. So let's look at the data first. So as we typically do, we show you the case rate in our local counties. It's been declining for months, declining at a slow rate. The lower graphic shows the positive rate among district employees. 34 in October, which was less than September. We had 7 through last Friday, but as of today, I think that's up to 11. So we're averaging a little more than 1 a day right now. If I had to guess, and it is only November 8th, but I think we'll be lucky if we can keep it the same as October, if not maybe slightly more. We are seeing a slight uptick in our case rate. Okay, so slide 3 shows the latest state law and policy. Nothing is new here. You saw all of this 2 weeks ago. It's mostly here for your reference. The one thing I would mention is that OSHA is presently poised to adopt a non-emergency regulation that could make the symptom self-check and contact tracing slightly easier to administer from an employer point of view, and those changes would take effect on January 1st. So if that comes to be, things could be a little bit easier for us administratively in that aspect at the beginning of the new year.
Dave, can I ask you on the first chart, the positive cases in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, what's, people do a lot of home testing now, so it seems like there's a lot of cases that aren't probably reported anywhere. How
Absolutely.
is that factored into trying to compare, the rates now with
Well,
what has been in the past or anything?
So there's many metrics I could present to you. This is just one that we've consistently brought to you. So just out of habit and consistency, we're showing it to you. But positivity rate and the concentration in wastewater are also ones that I look at every day. The positivity rate in Alameda County is still hovering around 5%, and it's actually ticked up a little bit. Between previous surges of the coronavirus, that's been well below 1%. So, yeah, this is a metric, President Lenny. It is certainly not the only one we track, but it's one of many.
And since the surges that there have been, they seem to be occurring kind of in the November, December, January period, more or less, or maybe 1 year looked like it was November, December, January, and 2022 it was January, February, March. What's the general predictions on that for this winter?
Most experts are hinting that we're going to have an uptick. Indoors, people are indoors more. Certainly the last 2 winters had the same effect. I think we're going to see a case rate increase. And I think not me, Dave Briggs, but the infectious disease experts are saying that. So we are assuming that the case rate, if it does go up, it'll be mild like it has been, and that any kind of subvariant will be well handled by therapeutics or vaccines. The other thing that I've read many times is that there is a high level of community, immunity at this point because of the Omicron subvariants that rolled through, as you can see, over the last summer. There is a high level of community immunity at this point. So if we do see an uptick, it should be relatively mild.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Dave, I thought what I heard from the CDC this morning is that if you already had COVID, after 3 months, your chances increase dramatically because it's leaving your system.
Yeah, certainly immunity does wane many months after you've had it. We're assuming that the level of vaccination in the Bay Area and the availability of the booster shots is going to keep that community protection in place, even if you've had it as recently as 3 months ago.
Which I did have it 3 months ago, and I got my booster yesterday. Right. So I'm the model citizen here. I'm feeling great.
Dave, to what extent the winter spike will be flu as well as COVID, or flu? Do we have any clue on any of that, or are we just throwing darts at a dartboard without knowing what the score is?
Yeah, and there's also RSV as well, so it could be a trifecta. But many people are mentioning that all 3 of those viruses circulating together could be, a compounding difficulty. But I don't think anybody knows how severe it will be.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I think I did cover this slide again, just the only thing really on the horizon other than what the state plans to do in late February at this point will probably be some technical changes that'll be embedded in an OSHA reg that should be promulgated at the first of the year. Okay, so slide 4, not a lot new to report here. As we have been saying for months now, the case rate is about 1 a day. Half dozen or so employees unable to work or telework due to the virus. Still no evidence of office-based transmission. And we haven't had an employee hospitalized with a severe case of COVID, inpatient, outpatient, since January. So still evidence that things are relatively mild. Okay, so as Clifford was mentioning, this is where we need to share a potential pathway forward, at least back to normal or back to a new normal, as outlined on this slide. And as a lot of your questions just were dealing with, it is all predicated on the virus remaining stable or continuing to improve or otherwise being mild. So all of this plan on slide 5 is predicated on that. If that remains true, we would come back to the board in the middle of December, your only December board meeting, and ask you to consider rescinding the district's declaration of emergency. That would happen first. We would open up the district facilities in January at the first of the year, so the public would be able to come to these board meetings when they are committee meetings, board meetings, and otherwise visit. We would transition employees from the emergency telework arrangement that those of them that are teleworking now, they would transition to a permanent telework. This has been vetted through ongoing conversations with our unions. We would look at lifting the indoor mask requirement at the end of January. And of course, whatever the state mandates, whether it's OSHA or state health in the form of contact tracing or symptom self-checks, reporting, disclosures, whatever's in play, of course, we would have to abide by that and continue doing that. But as I mentioned a moment ago, that too is also changing or could change. All of this plan and all of the changes that it involves would all be vetted and discussed with our unions ahead of time. These dates aren't set in stone. Cindy Sharon is leading those conversations with the unions in parallel. We're trying to do this together. Yes.
One other topic that you guys might want to employ when you get into that, there's going to be a certain amount of people that will still want to wear a mask. And what would be the position of
Sure.
I don't know the word I'm looking for, but what would the reaction of the district be for those that want to continue to wear masks?
Well, they would certainly be welcome to, and if anybody feels uncomfortable, so if we did lift the indoor masking requirement, any employee, any visitor, any board member would be free to wear a face covering if that made you more comfortable, and there shouldn't be any stigma associated with that.
I'm suggesting you may want to put that in the policy.
Okay.
And we should be, sorry, I have to reach out for my light here. We need to be cognizant that there may be some people who are harassed, thank you, who are choosing to wear a mask. So that has to be somehow written in there, so that's not going to happen. And if somebody is a harasser about that, they need to be dealt with somehow.
I understand.
Thank you.
And agree. Okay, so
I have a couple comments. It's good to start seeing some of these steps and what does it mean. I'm not completely familiar with what emergency powers the district has invoked under the emergency declaration. So when we consider rescinding our local emergency, I think we should understand what consequences that has. I have a general understanding of what's been going on and what we're still able to do without the emergency declaration. But I think when we have that in front of us in December, I'd like to have it in the board memo so that the board and the public can know what we're acting on and what we've done to transition beyond the emergency into stable policies that take us through the long term. So that would help act on that. I'm glad to see that we're planning on opening our facilities to the public, and that requires a little bit of planning. So understanding just what is the guidance that generally seems to apply from an OSHA perspective and from other perspectives is helpful. And I'm understanding of what health experts are saying is a predictable wave that could happen in the wintertime. Aiming for the end of January for modifying the indoor masking requirement makes sense, but I wouldn't want to be adherent to a fixed date if epidemiology doesn't meet an optimistic projection. I'm also understanding of the ability to design an office and a public space that's not an on-off switch. So we might find that certain areas that are open to the public, just as we start to open them up to the public, might be might not be appropriate for changing the requirements. But we might find a particular type of work setting that is not crowded or unlikely to become crowded. So those are discussions that we need to have with our employees and with the unions. Where is it appropriate? Where is it not appropriate? I'm mostly suggesting that it's not an on-off switch as we look to modify the requirement.
Okay.
Lastly, I think we could also consider what conditions would it generally mean to modify it again. So if there was another wave, how would we know? And what kind of action, what kind of guidance would staff have to take that action?
Okay, thank you. If there's no additional comments, I'm going to proceed to the last slide. So that was the future, or potentially the future. This is the here and now. So if the board wishes to continue conducting virtual board meetings, at least in the sense that the public doesn't have a physical location, you're obviously all here now, then the board would need to adopt these findings. These are consistent with the resolution in front of you. Clifford, if you want me to read this into the record or just
I
show the slide.
think the slide
Okay.
is clear, and I just assuming everything does remain stable, and assuming the board does undeclare the emergency, and we will share with the board what that really means, which is just a purchasing authority. Really, that's all it really provides us. We would have to do one more resolution like this on November 22nd, because there's 30 days between. You have to do it every 30 days, and the next December board meeting is not within the 30 days. After that November 22nd, assuming all remains the same, we will not be bringing this resolution to the board again.
So you need a motion for us to continue.
Correct.
So moved.
All right, motion by Frank, seconded by Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. Any abstentions? Motion carries 6-1. We are on to item 13.
Thank you, Dave. So next, consistent with the district's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're bringing to you today a resolution condemning the human rights violations against Iranian women and the people of Iran. Derry Moten, our director of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture, will present the resolution to the board for your consideration.
Good afternoon, board members. This is a motion to adopt a resolution condemning human rights violations against Iranian women and the people of Iran. To prepare for this resolution, staff conducted some interviews with employees of Iranian descent and other employees who were connected to similar situations in the Middle East. This is a resolution that is focused on addressing the most current items and the history of items that have occurred in terms of human rights violations in accordance with the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This was triggered by, on September 13th, that a young Kurdish woman named Masha Zinia Amini was arrested in Tehran for allegedly not wearing her hijab in accordance with the Islamic State of Iran's compulsory hijab laws, and was subsequently killed while in custody. Her death has exemplified more than 4 decades of human rights violations, repression, mistreatment of women, denial of equal treatment of women in Iranian society, also systemic discrimination against religious and cultural minorities and labor activists, and gender apartheid. The district's commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice compels the recognition and condemnation of such human rights abuses. The attached resolution amplifies the struggle and the voices of the people of Iran and renounces human rights violations, again, in accordance with the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we ask that you review the attached resolution and that you vote on its passing.
I would like to move the item. Second.
But I have a comment.
Okay, and I just want to make the point that this was brought to our attention by Joey Smith in public comment, and as Derry has pointed out, this was something that was taken to our employees and discussed and drawn up with their assistance. So it's not a board-driven resolution, but really one that was brought to us by our employees. Go ahead, Lisa.
I'm so pleased to see such a resolution. You know, over the many years I've been here at the district, I've been told by various GMs that we could not propose such a resolution unless there was some connection or nexus to water. I mean, I've been told that for years. So I'm very happy to see us move away from that position. And given this new opportunity in the future, I'd like to propose a resolution condemning the human rights violations against the women, children, and people of Africa, with relative to their ongoing atrocities perpetrated, sound like Daffy Duck, perpetrated against them. So I'd like to just sort of look at that in the future, Derry.
Yes, I will do that.
Yes.
All right, other board comments?
No, I joined with Lisa on that.
All right. Then we'll bring it to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derry.
Thank you, Derry. Next, I just want to provide a little background. Since 1982, the board, or back in 1982, the board adopted a resolution to elect annually the president and vice president of the board for a one-year term. Since 1996, the board began the practice of nominating the same two members to serve as president and vice president for a second year. At this point, I'll pass it off to President Linney to lead this discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Clifford. I asked for this item on here because I thought it would be at least worthy of discussion. I've noticed that certainly with other boards, special district boards, the ability to rotate the president position is a yearly sort of thing, and it allows more people an opportunity to be president of the board, so that rather than waiting in a rotation for what's essentially 14 years, it would obviously cut that in half and allow people to be able to, more people to serve and serve for a year. And so, I think it would be a good thing, but I'm interested to hear other board members' reaction to that and see if we want to make any changes there. Frank?
This is, first of all, let's be clear that what we haven't established is a policy. What we have said is that every year we will vote on who will be president and vice president. So we haven't made that 2 years a de facto, a legal policy. It's a de facto policy.
Right.
My experience, having been twice, in that spot, is that when we're dealing with various and sundry government agencies, having that rotating board president every year takes away some of the, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of the credibility of that board president. That board president, especially an organization like ours, and I'm going to be a little elitist here, but EBMUD is a premier organization in this state. We're one of 5, and we carry a lot of clout. But by having a rotating board president every year, I think takes away from what we are able to do as far as being effective. And so I'm not proposing that we put or codify 2 years. I'm going to be very clear on that, because as I recall, we have done on occasion where we didn't do that. So I would say what we have isn't, in my opinion, broke, and I would not want to do any more tinkering with it or codifying, because it's an option that we have every January.
Marguerite?
I'd be in favor of having a richer discussion about the topic and understanding. Frank brings up one way of thinking about it. Another way of thinking about it is shared power, and not putting one person at the point of always being the spokesperson, for the district, and also not being, as somebody who became board president out of rotation due to circumstances that I had nothing to do with, I would have been I would still be waiting to be board president. And I have a problem with our, with just accepting our traditions as traditions, and I don't think that, I think it's worth reviewing and pursuing. I know prior to this rotation, we actually had a board president that was the board president for many years. And I think that's not proper either. So I'm inclined to think that this is an idea worth talking more about, whether we put it into our policy or whether we, establish a new tradition. I'm fine with that. I'd also like to review the tradition of the way we do succession. So that's where I'm at.
Andy, and then John.
I prefer to keep this practice at a level of tradition and practice as opposed to creating a specific policy. We don't have a policy now, and I don't think that it would be. I think we could deprive ourselves of needed flexibility for in case we had circumstances like what Director Mellon is referring to. But that said, I do think that what Director Young is describing, where we share the role, where everybody gets a turn, or at least has, by the end of a potential second term, given the willingness of the board to entrust that role in their colleague, would have that opportunity at least once among 2 terms. Well, actually, I'm doing the math wrong. It would no, I am doing the math right. Yes, it would require 2 terms to complete that rotation. Without making that change in practice, it could take 3 or 4 terms, and that is a big expectation, and it deprives varying constituencies in the district of their representative having an opportunity to serve in that role. So I was the first director in my ward to ever serve as board president. And some of that had to do with individual circumstances that I need not get into, and some of that had to do with a few one-term board members that served in my predecessor role. So I think that there's a lot of reasons that we might make that transition. I'm currently serving in a commission role where the custom is to serve 2 years. But I also am very familiar with the practices of other special districts where that rotation really does serve the body as a whole, and I see that not really having any adverse consequences at BART where they do this, or other comparable special districts in our community. Other cities where they rotate mayor and vice mayor on an annual basis. It does seem like annual rotations are not an adverse practice, certainly, and to the extent that they might interrupt continuity, we just need to involve our vice president in some of those discussions to prepare for transitions. So those are my thoughts.
John?
Thank you. I find all the comments very interesting. I know when this came up a number of years ago, I was opposed to the thought of going from 2 to 1. And I understand what Frank's saying, I understand what Andy's saying, and I also understand what Doug and Margarita is saying. I think it'd be great if there's more sharing of what's going on in discussion and helping develop the board agenda with the vice president. I don't think that's ever happened, at least since the time I've been here. I'm certainly open to more discussion on this, and from there we can move in the direction we want to move. It does take a period of time, especially on statewide issues, when you're dealing in the role of president, to come up to speed, and the 2 years helps on that. Same token, 2 years can be very challenging, and it does deny those who are on the board an opportunity to maybe serve as president sooner, especially if they're going to be rotating off the board. I'm very open to having further discussion on this and not close it as an issue.
All right, other comments? Lisa?
it's true, it's not codified, so it's just a tradition. My recollection of the start of that was with John, because we were going through, we were dealing with the American River fight. That was you had two-year terms back to back, right? Yeah. So that started this uncodified tradition. And, you know, I don't feel strongly about it one way or another unless I was board president, in which case I'd prefer 2 years. So, you know, yeah, I'm open for further discussion about it. But, yeah, it's not a policy, not a written policy. It's just something that we've done. But I think if there is an inkling that it should be changed, that we should have a full discussion and just sort of hash it out, so to speak. So either way, but I'm open to further discussion.
All right. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, I would join in the need for further discussion. On the one hand, having served in the capacity of president, I just want everybody to realize what a responsibility that is. EBMUD makes a presentation regardless of who the president is. And that's a lasting presentation because we have already established ourselves in the state. I think the preparedness, the time and effort in being a president, the issues that are before us, they have grown more complex than some of the ones were in the past. And that means a lot of work on the part of the person who accepts the nomination for president. So I would say continued discussion is needed, and that I personally would like to congratulate the persons who have served as president in the past for the wonderful job they have done during that term. Those are my comments.
All right, thanks, Bill. I'm hearing everyone say open to more discussion, maybe not something that we've thought a lot about yet. More discussion, is that means in the new year, or means at the next board meeting, or what's the?
It seems to me that if we vote for a one-year term
1 year.
every year, that we have the opportunity, we're going to have one new board member. Maybe we'll have two, I hope not, but that you know, that those individuals be involved in that, you know, all the current board members be involved in the discussion. So I'd favor taking it up in the new year with an adequate amount of time to, you know, I want to understand. I think we anecdotally know the practices of many of the, you know, cities and special districts that we work with, but, you know, wouldn't mind a staff report that says, here's who does it the way we do it, or close to that, and here's, you know, just a bit of more information and the options we have in terms of, you know, keeping it tradition, but changing the tradition potentially to, you know, what does it mean if we establish, you know, actual terms or things like that beyond a year.
No, I concur with you, because really and truly, I would have had to have abstained on any vote on this regardless, because I think it's appropriate to, I mean, you're guaranteed you're going to have a new person here. And I think having that person having a say in it, because they're going to be around for the next 4 years. So, and Marguerite, I have no doubt that you'll be back here come January. Tomorrow, excuse me. But I think Marguerite's point is well taken, and you just saved me from having to do an abstain on a vote.
Well, it's not an action item anyway.
Yes.
And Sorry, and President Lenny, if I may, I think the board understands this, but the current resolution is that the president serves a one-year term,
Right.
and it's
Right.
just practice to do the second year. And so the board could certainly change that at any time without any additional votes.
Right, right. And I was just gonna make that point that, you know, I'm definitely hearing that, you know, not an interest in making it some sort of policy or law or whatever for here. And I think that was the interest in me bringing it up in the first place, was at least having some sort of discussion about this. And, you know, not necessarily a need to change it, but a willingness to take a look at the tradition that we have. And like I say, my main motivation is, you know, boy, this is something that, unless we come up with another form of governance, that being able to rotate the position more often than we do, it would be a good thing, in my opinion. Yeah, Andy.
I didn't ask for this to be specifically on the agenda, but I welcome, you know, now that we've had this opening discussion, I think it has been helpful because that we don't have to have this discussion when we're actually thinking about it in light of a specific individual who would be nominated for each office, and that takes, I think, some of the personal aspects out of it, and we're thinking more about the institution. So I like that we might attempt to get some consensus about what's best for the organization in advance of when we're actually electing the officers, which we I believe we have to do at the first meeting in January. So along those lines, I think that I would prefer that if we're not coming to consensus now, I would prefer that we attempt to do that at one additional meeting this year, so that we, you know, can formulate some thoughts understandably. You know, looking at the agenda, I wasn't quite sure what this was until I thought about it some more. But so we might want to come back and see if we've thought about it more. But I don't think that we should be having that conversation intermixed with the actual election, because it just would conflate. So that's my view on having at least one additional conversation this year.
All right, other comments?
Let's just do it in February. Have the board election, do the discussion in February, include our new board member, whoever that is. I mean, I just think it's really important to include him.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be decided prior to the election of the next board member, myself.
If that's the view, I wouldn't want to delay it, because I think it does affect committee assignments. I wouldn't want to delay the new board member getting involved into committee assignments. We have a rotation of the board president back into committees. So if the tension is, do we want the Ward 7 director seated and sworn, I think that is important. So I think that's more important than the concern that I just raised.
The president of the board gets selected for a one-year term, not a two-year term.
Right.
So there's
the way it is
there's no
Guarantee it's
impact
gonna happen.
on committee assignments or rotations at all.
It would be a delay.
Why? We just
Because
do what we ordinarily do.
which is for the so it would
We'll be electing a new board president anyway, unless, you know.
I've already said I'm not gonna run again, because I'm for shorter terms.
right. So for the director who would be rotating into the president role, that person would need to be shifting off of committees traditionally.
Right, that's the way it
Right.
would go.
So it would,
Right, they would
Be
anyway.
no
so
change.
if we delay usually the committee appointments come after the election of the board president.
Right, usually
Right.
the second meeting in January, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
The appointments
Right.
are approved at the second meeting, and then but they're made in between the first and second after the election of the
Right.
Yes.
president. So I would favor not delaying the committee assignments?
Why would
Yeah.
we?
Not talking about that.
Right. Well, I thought that there was a suggestion to delay the election of the officers.
No, not at all.
Delay the discussion of this change till
Oh, until after we've
February.
elected our new officers.
Yeah,
Okay.
have the conversation in February.
Yeah.
So it's not, I mean, I'm agreeing with you, not have it conflated with the election of the new president, just have it take place afterwards.
Okay. Yeah. I think if I was concerned about conflating the personalization of the change, and I think if everybody understands that it's just something that we're considering, and whoever's stepping into that role next might be serving for one, might be serving for two, depending on that discussion, then we've been productive in this meeting.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
think you've made the
Thank
case
you.
to have it in February. Any other comments on that item?
No, but Clifford, in anticipation of that next discussion, can you provide each of us with the board president rotation for the last 10 years?
We can do that, and we can also provide information on what other entities do as well, as directly on requested.
All right.
It's kind of up there on the wall.
Well, but never mind. Never
Well,
mind.
I think what Director McIntosh is asking for, board president and vice president.
Right.
Yes.
It only has an asterisk if you
Yeah.
have, I think.
All right, on to general manager report, item 15.
Yes, so the first one is on the drought update. As the board's aware, last April, when we adopted the Stage 2 drought emergency and 10% mandatory water use reduction, the board had asked us to return in early November to report on the progress with achieving the water reduction goals. So today's update includes the status of our water supply, our outreach activities this past year to help our customers achieve the water reduction goal, and a summary of how well our customers reduced their water consumption through October. To begin the presentation, we have Dave Briggs, Director of Operations and Maintenance.
All right, good afternoon again. And as you have been experiencing, we have gotten some rain here and snow actually in the past 24 hours. If everything hits the ground that's forecasted, we'll have an inch here locally, 2 inches of precip upcountry, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got 20 inches of low density snow up at Caples in the upper part of the watershed. It is a cold storm. Snow was reported at Calaveras Big Trees, which is about 4,500 feet, but the snow line probably went below 4,000 feet. So it's been a cold storm, not a ton of moisture, but if all this comes to be, we will be ahead of the curve upcountry. We'll be above average for the date upcountry, still below average for the date locally, but of course it's only the first week of November and very, very early. So with that bit of context, just looking at the storage numbers here, 63% capacity party in Comanche, 85% capacity here locally. We are where we want to be right now locally. That is, we don't want to be full going into the winter. So reservoir storage locally is right where the winter storage levels should be. Upcountry is where the drought is manifesting itself. We still have about 90,000 acre feet in Comanche that if we had that, we would be up at flood control, but we're 90,000 acre feet below that right now. We finished the water year at 520,000 acre feet of carryover storage. That dipped to about 515 in late October, but just in the last week, the river has picked up. Demand is very low, and I think you'll hear more from Alice in a minute about how well conservation is going. It's very remarkable, especially the first week in November. But with the river picking up, we've actually turned it around. So today's storage is higher than yesterday, and that is normal for this time of year, but just psychologically good to see. After 6 months of storage going down, it's going up now. So let's hopefully see more and more of that to come. All the supplemental water operations have been concluded. We've packed up shop, and we'll wait and see what happens in the winter and go from there once we see what plays out in the winter. And I'm going to hand it off to Alice.
Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon, President Linney, members of the board. So as Clifford mentioned, like this. Oh, you want to actually see my face? Yeah. Okay. I don't know why. Okay. So as the general manager said, we're here today to do a little bit more of an in-depth kind of check-in. As you recall, back on April 26th, you took a number of actions, declared a stage 2 drought, and after a lot of discussion, decided to settle on a 10% mandatory conservation goal. We set some restrictions on water use. We activated the excessive use ordinance, and directed staff to purchase supplemental supplies, and then also directed staff to come back kind of after the summer and check in and see how we did. So I'm going to be talking just in general about our conservation outreach activities this summer. I'm going to highlight a few specific things that we did, share some great photos and testimonials from the I Heart My Garden photo challenge, talk about conservation numbers, and then we've also got I think there were a few questions on the excessive use ordinance that we want to check in. So let's dive in. So in terms of outreach and messaging, our goal for this year was to build on our successful campaign last year, with the intent of getting a little bit more specific in terms of what we were asking our customers to do, both in terms of what programs we had, what we wanted them to do to save water, and then also communicating our restrictions on water use. Our outreach and messaging, kind of spans the gamut from, you can think about their sort of broad district-wide initiatives, things like advertising, things like our customer pipeline that go out to a lot of customers, our website, and then we also have more granular tools that we can use. So for example, here you see an article of the customer pipeline that came out shortly after we declared a drought that goes into, again, some specific details on what we're asking customers to do. We have modified our website so that if you go to our EBMUD.com homepage, there is that carousel image that directs people to the drought webpage that's updated regularly. I believe now we've also got the little banner at the very top of the website reminds people to turn off their irrigation systems. And then in terms of more granular kind of personalized messages, we can get pretty creative in how we target messaging through systems like our home water reports and our Iris water budgets. So you see here a couple examples. Our home water budgets that go out, they always have little tips and articles at the bottom. We update those regularly, and we can also target those based on customer characteristics. So somebody who irrigates might get a different message from somebody who doesn't. Advertising was also a very important part of our strategy this summer. So again, building on our Make Every Drop Count campaign from last year, we created a new suite of ads that again got a little bit more specific in terms of the things that we're asking customers to do. We also had one ad that was specific for our lawn rebate program. Those were run in print in English, Chinese, Spanish, and Vietnamese. We also had outdoor advertising. We utilized our Clear Channel credits for billboards and transit shelters west of Hills. And then east of Hills, we had digital billboards, digital kind of kiosks running the ads at Broadway Plaza and in Walnut Creek and Bishop Ranch in San Ramon. And then we also had our partnership with KTVU that included them developing ads that were run on live TV, that were run streaming, as well as putting together this drought microsite for us. Rebates are also very important. We see a lot of interest in rebates during a drought. We did take the action in July of increasing the dollar amounts for several of our popular rebate programs, so customers can now get up to $2.50 a square foot for lawn rebates. We also increased the amount for irrigation controllers, since those are very popular, and also just in terms of sort of bang for the buck in terms of water savings, they're very effective. I do want to just let you know this photo, this is actually a before and after that was submitted as part of our I Heart My Garden photo challenge. So this is a customer in Danville who was able to actually take advantage of our super rebate program to replace over 1,100 square foot of lawn. I'm just going to read briefly from their testimonial. They said, "We see our new yard as a work of art, nature's masterpiece. The best thing about it, other than being much lower maintenance than the lawn, is seeing all the insects, bees, and hummingbirds feasting on our plants. Thank you, EBMUD, for helping us to be able to help the environment, wildlife, and our pocketbook."
Say, Alice?
Yeah.
An interesting thing is going on in our neighborhoods. Wild pigs have been tearing up turf right and left. And I've been suggesting that since it's already torn up, they might as well contact EBMUD about the rebates. So expect some calls.
I was not aware of that, and my thanks to the Wild Pigs for promoting our program.
Next door, they're showing beautiful miles of lawn that suddenly look like somebody took a rototiller to them.
Wow, I was not aware of that. Well, thank you. That's interesting to hear. And I do want to just say, since we always do see an increase in interest in our lawn rebate programs during a drought, and since we increased the dollar amount in July, we've received over 240 applications. That's actually a pretty significant increase. And then we're continuing to work on tools to kind of help people actually move through these projects, because oftentimes we see a decrease between, people submit an application, but they don't know how to start or they don't finish the project. So we have tools like our office hours virtually that help customers, they can get questions answered, and they can kind of work with staff through any issues. Other conservation activities, again, anytime we're in a drought, we see an increase in demand for things like audits, water use consultations. We see an increase in reports of water waste, so we make sure to follow up on those. We've also been taking a more active approach towards our leak alerts. Those get sent out automatically to any customers that we have an email address for. Over the past year, we've been increasing the amount of print alerts that are going out. So customers, if we don't have an email address, will actually get a leak alert in the mail to let them know about this. And then our staff have been making calls to customers who have very large leaks to try to work with them. And then the nice thing too is, as we're kind of coming out of the pandemic, we're able to get back into the community a little bit more, do more community events. This is a photo from some tabling that we did at Bishop Ranch as part of, the launch of the ad campaign there. We were giving out some little succulents. We got a lot of attention. A lot of folks stopped by the booth and, learned about conservation programs. But while we are excited to get back into the community, I think we all recognize that, webinars and sort of digital offerings are increasingly important. It really helps make these sorts of educational opportunities more feasible for customers. So I do want to highlight our Water Wednesday webinar series continues to be very popular. You can see here a few that we had over this past year that were sort of a little more drought focused. We did do a drought update basically the day after the board declared a stage 2 drought, where we kind of went through our water supply and also talked about our restrictions and ways that customers can conserve. We had a firefight where we talked about fuel management, which is always a popular topic, and we always get a lot of questions from customers. Demystifying desal, that was last month. I listened in on that one personally. If you haven't had a chance, I highly recommend it. There were some, in addition to EBMUD staff, there were researchers from Stanford and Berkeley. It was very interesting. And then Conservation did a Water Wednesday, Goodbye Grass, Hello Garden, that was kind of an intro to lawn replacement, and that was attended by, 270 attendees. So just a kind of summary of some of our outreach activities we've talked about so far. So the KTVU partnership, and I do want to say some of the digital advertising opportunities are really great in terms of bang for the buck. So KTVU developed 2 ads for us. One sort of focused on indoor water use, one on outdoor water use. Those were in both English and Spanish. They were delivered live during the morning news. They also delivered those over 2 million times via their streaming service. We also got an additional 900,000 impressions when people watch videos on the KTVU website. They would see our ad as a pre-roll. They created that drought microsite for us that received over 3,000 unique visitors. That site included several sort of sponsored content stories EBMUD had provided. Those collectively were viewed 574 times. That included a story about our customer assistance program. That district drought webpage that I mentioned has gotten over 20,000 unique views. Social media continues to be important. In addition to just posting things that our followers can see, we've had a few campaigns where we've done what's called boosting the post, where you pay a little bit of money and Facebook or Twitter kind of treats it as an ad. So for example, the I Heart My Garden post got over 74,000 impressions. So that means it was in front of, people 74,000 times. And in conservation, we continue to send out home water reports. We send out about 110,000 of those a month. And year to date, we've alerted over 33,000 suspected leak events. We also do outreach to cities. So just as a reminder, last summer at the start of the drought, we did some very targeted outreach. We sent a number of letters to city elected officials, public works, and park staff. We've also been doing a lot of outreach to cities through our IRIS water budget program. In particular, staff have been meeting and working closely with the City of Oakland Parks Department. We have a pretty good relationship now with some of those park supervisors, so we can get in touch with them when there are issues. We're working on increasing city participation in some of our rebate programs. This photo is from the Alameda City Hall that's been doing a lawn rebate program. I think this is a little bit earlier in the process, but my understanding is it looks really nice now. And we're going to be looking at additional options over this winter to increase outreach to cities.
And Alice, when you say
Yes.
cities, do you also mean schools and counties? Or
Yes, cities and counties, and then we do also do outreach to schools as well. In this case, I'm speaking a little more specifically about cities. Yeah. I mean, I think, one thing we've talked about is I think the Community Affairs has regular kind of check-ins with city public works officials. Those tend to be more about construction, but we've talked to Community Affairs about maybe just including some conversation points around drought, and particularly just making sure that cities are not overwatering on their medians, since we get a lot of complaints about that.
yeah, I just think about school districts,
Yes.
especially
Absolutely.
ours here.
Yeah.
I was just going to point out, I observed one evening, one of the renditions that they put on was you're working with cities. See, we had medium strips overwatered. We had parks going off at the wrong time, coordinating that and getting it in sync. You see, sometimes we get blamed for the medium strips. We don't control that. People don't know that, but it made it very clear whose responsibility it was and how our people were on top of it, getting them to get in line. I wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you. So I do want to just share a couple photos and testimonials from the I Heart My Garden Photo Challenge. This was the second time that we'd run that event. So this photo you see right here, this is the People's Choice Award winner. So in addition to submitting their photos, people could also go onto our gallery and vote for their favorites. So this is a site in Danville. I just want to, we in general, I think we got 40 entries from across the service area. It was mostly residential, but I think we did get at least one institutional customer, so that was nice to see. And then this is the most inspiring DIY design, and this is a project in San Leandro. And I'm just going to read this testimonial from the customer. They said, "We did all the work ourselves, which was satisfying in itself. But because we spent so much time in our front yard, we were able to get to know many of our neighbors and passerby who stopped to chat with us and admire our project. It was especially wonderful to talk to people as this was during COVID and we had missed connecting with people in person. I enjoy looking at my yard every time I leave or come back home." Excuse me. So in terms of what this means in terms of conservation savings. So what I'm showing here is May through October. That's kind of like our peak irrigation season is July through October. And July through October was 14.5% lower than 2020. Excuse me. When you look at things on a calendar year-to-date basis, which is what the state does, our numbers are a little bit lower. Not surprisingly, you can recall January through June was incredibly dry. So we had a lot of people turning on their irrigation systems in like February, March, something we wouldn't normally do. So year to date, in terms of conservation savings, we're trending at around 9.2%. And we expect to close the calendar year off at somewhere between 9 and 10% conservation savings compared to 2020. And just as a reminder, that 2020 baseline that we started from was already pretty low. That was 13% lower than 2013. So our customers continue to save water during droughts, and then oftentimes we'll kind of lock in those savings. I don't know if there's any questions about this. You can see here, we've broken it down, just the comparison of production, and then you can also see west of Hills as well as east of Change. So it's great to see that, all parts of our service area folks are conserving.
Is there a possibility of doing a 2013, 2020, 2022 so that we can actually really tell the story?
Absolutely. Do you want to see that like month by month or just kind of?
Yeah, because I start to get questions about, well, we're not really doing that well. It's only 10%. So, well, that's 10% on top of what we were already down. So it would be helpful to have that.
Yeah, we can definitely put that together. I'm just making a note. Yeah, because I think, you know, like I said, I mean, especially given how much conservation our customers had done up to 2020, I feel good about this. I feel like, you know, folks are continuing to respond.
And we do use the 2020 date a year because that is what the state had asked and set as a baseline.
Right.
But,
No,
but
I
we'll provide the data to show you how much more is conserved compared to 2013.
Yeah, it is striking that, and the further back you go, I mean, sometimes we'll look at like
Oh,
2005.
yeah, I don't want to look at
and it's-
2006 or something like
okay.
that.
And nothing against the chart of data, but I also like the graphical display, perhaps with different colors or line distinctions
Yeah.
representing the different years.
We can certainly do that. Yeah, happy to do that. So, you know, just in conclusion, we set a goal of 10%. We're right about there, and our customers are continuing to conserve. As Dave mentioned, you know, the data for the first week of November was pretty striking. I think the first week of November compared to the first week of November of 2020, we were down like 22%. So, to me, that signals that, you know, customers have learned when it rains, they need to turn their irrigation systems off. So it's great that they're actually responding to that. So I just want to move on really quickly and touch on our excessive use penalty ordinance. So just as a reminder, you know, we sent about 13,000 courtesy notifications in May. That included about 4,000 letters that went to customers who had a billing cycle that exceeded the current threshold sometime in the past year. And we did look, and our review showed that for those high-using customers, their consumption was lower in the summer of 2022 compared to 2021 and 2020. Part of that could be, you know, some of those high users might have been folks who had leaks and fixed them, but it could also be folks responding to that messaging. Through the end of October, we've sent about 2,713 warning letters. And as you know, we've had 322 violations that have been reported to you so far. That does include, I want to mention, single-family residential as well as individually metered multifamily units that have a BCC of 8,800. So that is the way the excessive use ordinance is written, and that is in keeping with the state law that requires us to discourage excessive use. And just in response to a board question, we did do a review of those 332 violations. 18 customers were delinquent on their water bills. And so that's something that we'll continue to kind of keep an eye on going forward. Now, it's a little early to assess the effectiveness of the ordinance the way it's currently structured. You know, we've only had sort of one season to go through. But one data point that I can share is we did look at a group of customers who'd kind of been through 2 complete billing cycles. So in that group of customers, which is, you know, between July 1st and August 19th, there were 1,690 warning letters that were sent. When you look at that same cohort, there were 877 that received a penalty in the next billing cycle. So that's about 52%. So about half of the customers, you know, it seems like we're able to respond to the warning letter. We will be coming back to the board at the next board meeting with the next list of violations. We expect that list is going to be longer than last month's. I just want to give you a heads up about that because that list is going to include water use from September. You recall we had that period with that heat wave where water use went up significantly. So we're starting to see that, but we are expecting that with the cooler weather and the rain, water use is going down. So the list should kind of gradually get shorter. So those are the items I had to discuss. I don't know if there's any questions for me on conservation or the excessive use ordinance. And if not, I can turn it over to Andrea. Yes?
So, believe it or not, there's still people making babies out there, and they can't, and when they do, they say, our water is going to change. And I said, well, yeah, you call. So who is the preferred call for, can we have a little bit of an edge on what our water allotment would be?
Yeah, well, so just as a reminder, our 10% goal is really a community-wide goal. Right? So we're not looking at individual customers and saying, you have to cut 10%, you have to cut 10%, right? So really it's not, there's not like an allocation for a specific customer. I would let people know that like if they have new members of their family, that's great. We just want to make sure that everybody is using water efficiently.
Okay, well, they're asking the question, so
You can send them to me. I'm happy to talk to them and congratulate them and explain to them.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions? All right, if not, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, who's going to talk a little bit about all the media attention we've been getting.
Good afternoon, members of the board. So I just want to say that water conservation and public affairs have been somewhat joined at the hip in this last 2 years, and we've worked together very closely. It's been very fruitful. In addition to all the external communications and customer pipeline and our website and social media, certainly the media have been quite helpful for us in terms of getting the word out to our customers. So since our last drought declaration in March of this year, we issued 7 press releases on a variety of topics, including, of course, the drought announcement, drought surcharge. We've done the regional event in August with the state and Wade Crowfoot and our regional partners. And we've also been advertising the Water Wednesdays that Alice talked about with media advisories and social media posts. Our media coverage has shifted, as we would expect, right, from, water supply to our response to that water supply in March to, well, what are we going to do about it? How can we help our customers? What are we doing to help our customers? And what should our customers be doing? And now we're also getting a lot of kind of broader questions about what does this really mean? What is our response to climate change? What about additional development? So we're getting some of those bigger questions now. And certainly at this point in time, the focus is on excessive use. And so we expect to have additional media coverage after the next list of excessive water use customers is released. And for next steps, we'll continue to plan for additional transfers if we need to. We are going to be transitioning, as we already have, to winter drought messaging and working as closely as we can with our excessive use customers. And we'll take a look in the spring at what happens next. So with that, I'm available and the team is available to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I have an adjacent question, not to the press coverage, but to going back to Alice's presentation on Water Wednesday, which I think is a great, I don't know who's, I think it's a PIO question.
Yeah,
it might even be an internet question.
Yeah.
I just think they're great, and I often try to refer people back to ones that have happened, and what I notice is that it only goes back a few, and I'm wondering if there's a way to have an archive set up so that we can have all of them up there.
Absolutely.
Because they have lasting, they're evergreen content, really, in a lot of ways. So I'd love to see it, just more, like many comments about our website, a little bit more accessible if you're searching.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Finally, attached is the monthly report, and I can answer any questions you may have.
Okay, go ahead.
Real quick, I noticed on page 82, it talked about the meeting that Marguerite had with Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Can, and then page 84 talked about the event where I spoke at it, and all it says is staff. Why does it not have board members' names in there?
Okay, I'm just looking at Jeanette. I mean, we don't normally put it in, but I can.
Well, maybe it should for the public record, If a board member is actively engaged in an activity, it would be nice if it's mentioned for the record.
Any issues, Derek?
I'm not aware of any issues, though.
There should be.
Okay, let me take that into consideration.
All right.
It's going to be fixed, John.
We'll see.
Anything else? Okay, then we're on to reports and director comments. If anyone is online to comment on items 16 and 17, please raise your hand when this item is up for discussion. Committee reports, the minutes from the October 25th Sustainability, Energy, and the Finance Administration Committee meetings are included in your packet. We will now receive reports from this morning's Planning and the Legislative Human Resources Committee meetings. And Planning Director Young.
Okay, in the planning committee, we had 3 items. We had an update on the development of the, our local hazard mitigation plan, which covers the array of natural disasters and events that can present risk to us, which is key to having that plan on file and adopted is key to winning full funding in the event of a calamity of that sort. We also had an update on our wet weather program, which is we're on track, and talked about the progress we're making towards meeting the long-term consent decree standards. And then finally, we had an update on paving and agreed to accept the progress report there, and are still hoping for more enlightenment on that as it goes forward.
All right, thank you. Director McIntosh?
The Legislative Human Resources Committee met this morning. We had one item only on our agenda, and that was the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategic Plan update.
Great. All right, thank you. Any other items for future consideration? Please submit those to the general manager. Any director comments?
You know, oh, I would just like to I had planned to attend Frank's soiree this afternoon, but I thought we'd be finished sooner. So in lieu of me attending this afternoon, I'm taking Frank to lunch next week.
You can declare it, Frank?
Declare what? No, it'll be under $45.
That's not what I heard.
Oh, you're a cheap date.
Yeah.
I'm really cheap.
All right. We are adjourning today, honoring our veterans, and November 11th. Each year for Veterans Day, the district recognizes and honors our employees and board members who have served in the U.S. military. This year, Veterans Day will be observed on November 11th. Today, we're closing our meeting to thank all of the district employees for their military service and express our deep gratitude for their service to our nation. Their names will now appear on the screen.
I gotta admit, every year when we see this, it's really very heartwarming.
It's amazing how many.
Give us one more. We want to. We're probably going to reshare because it's not showing up in Zoom.
Okay.
Online.
Oh, not all the names are.
Not showing at all.
Now let's get it right.
Whoops.
Hey, Bill. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your service that way.
Category because I'm a disabled vet in addition. So you, Derry, you can note that.
All right, the next regular meeting of the board will be held on Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022 at 1:15 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned.